Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. This time out, a new addition to Mesa Boogie's Mark V family. Let's get started. Beside me is the Mesa Boogie Mark V 35. It was just introduced, and it's a big brother to the very popular Mark V 25 tube amplifier. The Mark V 35 is very similar to the Mark V 25, but it does have some great new features, so let's talk about some of the differences between the amps and some of how they're the same. Both amplifiers are based around an EL84 power tube section. Now the Mark V 35 has 4 EL84s, and that gives us up to 35 watts of output power for increased headroom over the original Mark V 25. You can also use Mesa Boogie's proprietary Dynawatt technology to switch down to 25 watts, or in fact you can go all the way down to 10 watts of output power, which makes it great for a bedroom practice amplifier. Because we have 4 EL84 power tubes, the Mark V 35 has a bigger output transformer than the original Mark V 25. Now that larger output transformer does affect the tone. In addition to increased headroom because of the extra power, we also get a little thicker, a little richer tone from the amplifier, especially when we're pushing it hard. The Mark V 35 has 2 completely independent preamp channels. Now this is great because it allows you to set up 2 different tones and then instantly switch between them using the included foot switch. The first channel is the clean channel, and it has 3 mode settings: clean, fat, and crunch, and we'll listen to those in just a second. The second channel is the gain channel, and it recreates 3 classic Mesa Boogie tones. We've got the Mark IIC+, we've got the Mark IV, and we've got the Xtreme setting. Now, those are great for gainy sounds, whether you're playing rhythm or you want fat singing leads. To increase the versatility, there's a separate solo master volume for each channel, so you can set those up independently and engage those when you want to boost the volume up for a solo. One for the clean channel and one for the dirty channel. The onboard reverb uses a long spring pan, and this gives us a nice, rich, full-sounding reverb, and we've got separate reverb settings for each channel as well. Like the Mark 25, the Mark 35 is a very interesting mid-range control on the clean channel. When you turn that control to the left, so it's less than 50%, you have a standard mid-range control. When you turn it above 50%, you get a gain boost, so you can actually drive that clean channel into a nice amount of breakup. There's a 5-band EQ that can be assigned to either channel or both channels, or you can use the foot switch to bring that EQ in and out. On the back channel we have an effects loop, and we also have Mesa Boogie's proprietary Cabclone. Now the Cabclone allows us to send a direct signal out of the amplifier into a recorder or into a live sound console and get the sound of a mic'd up speaker. On the Mark V 35, they've added a third selection as far as the Cabclone tone, so we've got a closed back cabinet, we've got an open back cabinet, and we've got a vintage cabinet to choose from. The Cabclone also drives the headphone outputs, so you get an emulated microphone and speaker when you're listening through headphones for private practice. As I'm sure you've noticed, the Mark V 35 is actually available in a combo format. Now the Mark V 25 was only available in a head format, and the Mark V 35 is also available as a head. In the combo format, it comes loaded with a single 12-inch speaker, and that's a Celestion Custom 90. The cabinet is slightly different than the traditional Mesa Boogie cabinet. It's actually made from 1/2-inch plywood instead of 5/8. Now this makes the cabinet lighter, which is great. The entire amplifier comes in about 44 pounds, but it also means that the cabinet resonates a bit more, and that does contribute to the tone, adding additional richness. Let's check out some of the sounds of the Mesa Boogie Mark V 35 combo. I'm playing a Gibson Les Paul Standard 1959 reissue. As I mentioned, there are 3 operating modes for each channel. We'll begin on the clean channel in the first mode, which is the clean mode. That's the lowest gain setting. I've got the gain set to about 10 o'clock. The tone controls are all set to 12 o'clock. My master's at about 9 o'clock. The EQ is switched out, and we've got a little bit of reverb dialed in. Here's our bridge pickup. You can hear that's a very clean, very clear, articulate tone with nice punch to it and great sparkle on top. Now I'll switch to the second mode, which is called Fat Mode. We'll leave all the settings the same. That's a round, fat tone, nice bottom end to it. Still has a nice sparkling top end as well. Not quite as bright as the clean mode, but it's still very articulate. When we switch to crunch mode, the gain jumps up, which will give us a nice breakup in the tone. And in fact, you can drive this hard enough to where you get a nice solo tone out of it as well. So we'll begin with the input gain setting where it was. That's a round, fat tone that's great for crunchy rhythms as well as for singing leads. We can push the gain up even farther, which I'll show you in a second, but it's still an articulate tone that's very responsive to your pick dynamics and the volume control on your guitar. So let's turn the gain up to about 3 o'clock. Tons of sustain there. That's a really fat singing tone. This is actually one of my favorite modes on this amplifier because it's so touch responsive when you're playing it. Now let's listen to it with the EQ engaged. I'm going to turn it on using the foot switch, and what I have going on is a bit of a boost on the low end and a bit of a boost on the high end. First I'll play the sound without the EQ, then I'll add the EQ in. That's a gutsy tone with a really thick bottom end, but a lot of nice cut on the top end as well. And this allows you to do the classic Mesa Boogie setting, where you turn the bass down to keep the bottom end nice and tight, and then turn it up on the EQ to still give you a full, rich bass response. Now we'll turn the EQ off and we'll switch over to the other channel. We'll begin in the Mark IIC Plus mode, which is the first mode. We'll set the gain to about 12 o'clock. All the tone controls are also at 12 o'clock. The EQ is switched out. That's a singing tone with a lot of sustain. Not super heavy gain, but a good amount of gain there. And in fact, we have plenty to go. We could turn up quite a bit further and get a really smooth tone. In the Mark IV setting, which is mode 2, we still have tons of gain, but the tonality changes slightly from the Mark IIC Plus. Lots of singing sustain there. It's a little bit more aggressive tonality to my ear. Punches through well, has a real chunky mid-range. Now we'll go to mode 3, which is labeled Xtreme. It has tons of gain, but it's very articulate. It really cuts through with a lot of clarity. That's a fat sound. The bottom end, lower mid-range really come up on that, but we still have that cutting top end and tons of gain. Now let's set this up for a heavier tone. I'm going to bring the gain up to about 3 o'clock. I'm going to bring the bass back to about 9 o'clock, and I'll engage the equalizer. Here's our tone without the EQ. With the EQ. Lots of gain there, but by rolling that bass back on the channel, we're getting a tight bottom end, and then bringing that bass back up using the equalizer gives us a fat, full tone. Now let's check out how the solo controls work. Each channel, of course, has its own master volume that lets us set the output level for that particular channel. But when we step on the foot switch and engage the solo function, we can go to a different volume level. Usually you'd use that to boost things up when you're playing a solo, but you could also use it to turn a channel down or even to mute a channel completely. So here's our standard master volume setting. Now we'll step on the solo control. This allows you to really punch through when it's time to take a solo, when you want to step into the spotlight, or you can turn it all the way off and use it as a mute function. We have a similar function on the gain channel, so either channel can have both a standard master volume as well as a solo volume. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Mesa Boogie Mark 535. I think this is an incredible amplifier. There's 6 different modes there that give you so much flexibility. You have versatile tone controls, the onboard EQ, which is foot switchable. Really is an amplifier that can dial in exactly the tone that you want no matter what style of music you're playing. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Be sure to tune in next time. We'll have more guitars, more amps, more effects, and we'll be making lots of music. I'm Mitch Gallagher.